As I measure the passing of time, well, let's change that up a bit. In the time it would take you to boil an egg, you could read this blog. And what is this blog about? Freedom! So, put on your William Wallace shit kickers. We're about to launch a counterattack on liberty. Liberty is a funny thing. We, the people of the West, practically worship it. In fact, I say that we are cultists of liberty in many respects. But not perfect liberty, for the state of perfect liberty is the complete freedom to do whatever it is we want to do. Ours is an imperfect liberty, constrained by the liberty of others. That is to say, we are free to act to the extent that our free acts do not impinge or infringe upon the ability of others to act freely. Hence, we, the people of the West, are cultists of imperfect liberty. And central to our doctrine is the mandate of self-determination, and it is to this point that I wish to turn our inquiry. What kind of creature is this self-determined man? In a culture that prizes laws of competition as if they were modes of being, this self-determined man isolates himself from everyone in his climb to the top. He clothes himself in the legislation of imperfect duties like armor, so that no one may rightfully prevent him from taking his due, from climbing to the top, and from being the very best at whatever it is that society says is best. This self-determined man views his neighbors, his friends, his co-workers, and even his own family with suspicion. He suspects them because they suspect him. He knows that they, too, are rushing to the top. He knows that they, too, are driven as self-determined creatures, just as he is. In a culture of such creatures, paranoia and distrust is the norm. So this self-determined man isolates himself as if on a fortress island, using the legislation and doctrines of imperfect liberty like an impassable moat. He jealously watches his neighbors in their own island fortresses, taking note of their comings and goings, taking note of every conceivable weakness and strength, taking note of how best to use them before they use him. But enough about this creature for the moment. Remember that fellow called Marx? That much maligned and oft-villainized thinker? He once remarked that modern industrialism has alienated man from the product of his labor, and thereby ultimately alienated man from himself. Capitalistic three-piece and corporations everywhere denounced him as a heretic, a filthy commie, and other things best not spoken of in impolite company. After all, without capitalism and the holy laws of competition in the blessed free open markets, our self-determined man could not thrive. Where did Marx get this idea of alienation, I wonder? Marx, being a highly educated and well-learned man, would have no doubt been familiar with Eastern ideologies. And, not surprisingly, we find this idea of alienation nearly 25 centuries earlier in the writings of Confucius. The idea of self-determination, of individualism, was, to Confucius, an abomination. In fact, he claimed that this self-made man, this individualist, this self-determined creature, was the antithesis of social harmony. A society of such creatures could never harmonize anything, because such a society is comprised of creatures supremely disinterested in its fellows. So why did Confucius think this? For Confucius, social harmony can only happen when the self harmonizes with the other, until the self is the other. This may sound strange, but even Aristotle said something of the like. For Aristotle claimed that to love oneself, one must love other people as if they were the self, and hence being a good friend is to be a lover of oneself. I know, that's very wordy and sort of convoluted, and you might have had to read that a couple of times. I'll let that sink in for a moment. Okay, so rather than focusing on the individual, Confucius focused on the family, for he saw the family as the genesis of all social relationships. The difference here can be expressed medically. We, the cultists of imperfect liberty, when we go to the doctor, we must sign informed consent forms. so that there is no mistake about whether the medical procedure being done is in fact what we want done. It is a protection of our right to being a self-determined man, and to protect ourselves from the devious designs of our greedy family, friends, and government, we sign advance directives and living wills to make certain that, even if we are rendered incompetent or brain dead, that our right to self-determination remain untarnished. As a consequence, the family becomes more and more excluded from the process, because no one trusts whether our own family will make the right choices for oneself, because, for we, the cultists of imperfect liberty, the only one who knows what's right for oneself is oneself. Yet in Confucian cultures, there is no such thing as informed consent or advance directives. If the doctor wants to treat a patient, he must consult the family. The family, as a whole unit, makes decisions about the treatment and care of the patient. Moreover, the physician almost never tells the patient what is wrong with her. The physician tells her family, and her family decides if the patient needs to know, because they know better than anyone what the patient would want. So why did I tell you that? Self-determination hasn't simply excluded family from these kinds of practices, they have alienated family. And by alienating family from oneself, Confucius claims, one alienates oneself from oneself. Because no one is really an island, because we are social creatures, because of the interdependence of our species, self-determination and individualism alienates the self from others with moats of imperfect duties and fortresses of paranoia. So I ask, and I end this with, what price liberty?